Indiana here with episode 51 of the Star Wars podcast. And today I'm here just to talk a few minutes about my thoughts on the Star Wars fandom. So, as many of you can probably tell from my YouTube channel, I'm obviously a Star Wars fan. I love the Star Wars movies. My favorite movie is Rogue One, followed by Return of the Jedi. Return of my Jedi was my favorite Star Wars film the pre up until Rogue One came out, and then when Rogue One came out, that one quickly became my favorite Star Wars movie. I saw it 4 times in theaters and watched it at least 10 times within the first year it came out. Um, and then I've been watching Star Wars since about the fourth grade. I'm in my senior year of college now, so I don't know exactly how many years that is, but it's been in my life for a good chunk of it. I grew up on not the special editions, the Laserdisc versions of the film. So I grew up without the special editions, essentially. They haven't been a part of my life. So, in my opinion, Han Solo definitely shot first because that's the only version of it I've basically seen. I've only seen the special edition of episode 4 once. But that being said, I in the past year have had problems with the Star Wars fandom. And my problems with the Star Wars fandom come in the way of The Last Jedi. Last Jedi, in my opinion, was a decent Star Wars film. I don't think there was anything absolutely terrible about it. Honestly, my least favorite part about the film, looking back on it now, is that it's not rewatchable. And here's what I mean by that. The movie to me is reliant on surprises to engage your attention, which means that the second time watching it, you know exactly what's going to happen. So those same surprises aren't going to engage you as much. Instead, the only things that are engaging the second time around are specific things like the Praetorian Guard fight scene or the fight scene between Luke and Kylo Ren. It's very specific things like that in rewatches of the movies of The Last Jedi uh, that captures your attention a lot when rewatching that. I think those are specific scenes that people would look on and think that those are excellent scenes no matter the fan, even if they hate the film. I could be wrong, but those are scenes I really don't see people hate on at all. And I personally loved The Last Jedi the first time I saw the film. When I came out of the theater, I was ecstatic. I remember being on the edge of my seat the whole film. I personally had no problems with it. I know that Mark Hamill himself and many other people have problems with the direction they took Luke Skywalker, but I honestly have no direction. To me, it makes perfect sense for Luke to be in the place that he is. Sure, Luke is a person who in his past has been very hopeful, but he's grown up at this point and he's seen the galaxy. On top of that, he made a decision that led to his own nephew going towards the dark side. It just makes sense that Luke himself would want to shelter himself off as a way of not hurting other people or whatever he was trying to do exactly. But honestly, the state you find Luke in the film makes sense to me. And the state that he ends in the film, apart from being dead, completely makes sense to me too. I know why he died. It's because he got himself super tired from doing the force projection. I wish he didn't die. But that aside, I think The Last Jedi, in its right, was a good film. And there are other problems I have with it. Canto Bite was a little boring. Um, but I think there has been too much hate directed towards The Last Jedi. So much hate, in fact, that to me it's made the fandom toxic, and it's something that I don't like associating with as much as I once did. I hate bringing up The Last Jedi because in my groups of Star Wars fans, it seems to either have hope and people who like it, who are actually very few and far between, and then people who just absolutely hate it. Most everyone else just absolutely hates it and isn't willing to have any sort of discussion about it. They say they hate it, that's it. And they think because they hate it and because it's so bad that Star Wars fandom is now dying. I'll tell you this, the Star Wars fandom is not dying. The Star Wars fandom is excellent. Anyone who thinks it is dying is because they, for some reason, no longer care. In my opinion, you are not a Star Wars fan if you are not planning on going to see Episode 9. Episode 9 is the culmination of what Star Wars fans have been wanting since it came out in 1977. I wrote my senior thesis on the release of the Star Wars film, and I can tell you when Episode 4 was released in theaters, that was the biggest movie of all time to hit. And if Episode 9 is not a big hit because for some reason Star Wars fans are disappointed in Episode 8, that makes no sense. We saw people hate on Episode 1, and they still came out to see Episodes 2 and 3. So to think that it's right to put down new Star Wars movies that come out and not give a chance to the next one because you think Disney's ruining it for some reason or whatnot, to me is absolutely ridiculous. As Star Wars fans, we should have hope that the next content we get is good. And yes, if the content we get is repeatedly bad, and I say repeatedly bad, we should do something to correct the actions. But honestly, Disney has put out good products in Star Wars. There's absolutely no disputing that. Rogue One is held as a great film. Yes, there are a few people that find it boring and slow at the beginning, but there's no one that's going to contest that the Battle of Scarif was excellent. Rogue One is a fantastic Star Wars film, and we need to remember that Disney has put out good Star Wars content along with the bad. And George Lucas put out terrible Star Wars content and excellent Star Wars content. Attack of the Clones, my least favorite Star Wars film. By far, Last Jedi could never touch how bad I think Attack of the Clones is compared to all the other Star Wars films. But I still watch it. I still think Attack of the Clones overall adds something to the fandom and adds lore and world building. I think Last Jedi adds something to the fandom, whether it's world building in terms of the Force or character development for Kylo Ren. I think it adds something to Star Wars. And on top of Disney has put out other content outside of Rogue One that I think has been excellent. Personally, I love the Solo film. The Solo film, to me, was an excellent showing of Disney being able to turn things around from a terrible situation. Yes, the Solo film, I will give you, is not the best film on Earth. But what the Solo film is a good popcorn movie. Solo film is an excellent popcorn movie to just sit back and relax and watch something fun for once that you don't have to worry about whether or not it's good. And it's a Star Wars film without the Force or anything like that. It's just fun. But the problem is people looked at The Last Jedi as terrible and it overshadowed Solo coming out. So those of us that are fans that love Solo are unlikely to get a sequel film to Solo following up on the story of Darth Maul and Kira and Lando, which we probably would have gotten if it had released in December outside of the shadow of Last Jedi. I think there were other problems outside of just being simply close to Last Jedi with Disney. I don't think they advertised Solo as well. I don't think they focused on it as much. I think they should have pushed back the release date. Um, but my point is we are letting Star Wars fans are letting their hate for The Last Jedi permeate everything about the fandom, and making them question more things than they should. And not even that, they're preventing it from letting them go and experience excellent Star Wars content that exists. I mean, Disney put out the Rebels series, which was excellent. They're currently putting out Resistance, which, from all I can tell, has been really good so far. Not Rebels quality yet, but the ending of the season has been really good at this moment in time, and I am personally loving it. So the point is I think our fandom needs to start transitioning back from hate to love. Because when I look on YouTube, I hate seeing in my feed these videos that Star Wars is dying, Star Wars is blah blah blah, Last Jedi was terrible, here's 10 reasons why. These films, these videos, when I look at them, don't make me think positively about the community around me in Star Wars. And yes, if if there's critiques to be made, make the critiques. But at the same time, don't kill everyone out of the fandom by consistently making these critiques and these arguments. And don't argue that Star Wars is dying simply because we get one movie that the fandom is split over. Um, it makes no sense to hate something that you love because of one thing. And yes, a movie's a big deal. In Star Wars, we wait for movies for years. But it's at the same time something I think we can all agree on, that we want to end up the best, and having a community surrounding it that is toxic is going to keep other people out of it, or lead towards people leaving our community that we want entering it, or have been great for our community already, is not going to help us in the long run as a fandom of Star Wars. Because what we need is to be generating more fans and more people who love our thing. But when people go online and they see, oh, Star Wars is dying, they're not going to think, I need to go watch these excellent movies that are cultural classics and should never and should not be touched and should be put on this pedestal. Instead, they're going to think, I can ignore that and go on to the next piece of pop culture. Or they're going to think, what fans would put down their own fandom and just, again, ignore us and find a fandom that's more, or a YouTube base that's more friendly. And there are plenty of communities out there that are more friendly. And yes, there's a little bit of toxicity in every community, but to me right now, it's so persistent in the Star Wars community. It's sad. One of my best moments as a Star Wars fan was when I went to Star Wars Celebration in Orlando. And why that was is all around you, you can see fans who love Star Wars and are there because they think it's a great fandom. And there's little, all there is love when you go to Star Wars Celebration. You're not going to encounter someone who's going to bash the last Star Wars movie. You're going to encounter someone who's going to be looking forward to the next content coming out, regardless of what they got. You're going to be looking at lines of people sitting outside a door for an hour and a half just to go find out what the next books are. Um, I mean, considering that outside of the movies, outside of television, we're getting excellent stories being told in books, excellent stories being told in comic books. I don't know if any of you know who Dr. Aphra is. She's personally my favorite Star Wars comic book character right now, who originated in the comics and has this awesome pair of evil droids that are like the evil counterparts of C3PO and R2D2, BT1 and Triple Zero. And there's just excellent stories being told here. Yeah, there's bad stories that come out in these medians as well, but bad stories happen. People, you're not always going to get your perfect Star Wars story. You're not always going to have someone there. The best we can hope for is having someone there who is trying their best. And honestly, I feel like that's what Lucasfilm was doing when they made The Last Jedi. Was trying their best. They were trying to make a film they thought the fans would love. Maybe they didn't go in the direction that they should have gone in. But you can't deny that when Lucasfilm makes a Star Wars movie, apart from the fact they're obviously trying to make money, you can't deny though that when they make a Star Wars movie, they're thinking of what the fans want. I mean, they hired John Williams for all of the sequel films to make the music. If they didn't want to go to the origins of what Star Wars was, they wouldn't go to the effort to get all of these actors back that we love and to get writers like Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Episode 5, to write Episode 7 and to write the solo film. And yes, I'm sure some of you have your problems with Rian Johnson. But if there's one thing you can't deny about Rian Johnson, is that he has a love for Star Wars, and that's why he was in it. Same with Gareth Edwards. Same with every director that has done the new Star Wars stuff since it's come out. All of them have an admiration and a love for Star Wars. If you've looked at the film industry at all, many of these people were influenced by Star Wars to become film. Star Wars was literally a film that changed the film industry and influenced many people in the future going forward. So to say that none of these people love Star Wars is going to be absolutely false. And they just have a different vision than you have. We all have a different vision. That's why the fan base has been so divisive over episode 8 is because we have a different vision for the films are going to be. And yes, you're not going to get the episode 8 that you wanted, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get the episode 9 that you wanted. Look at the prequel trilogy. People absolutely loathe episode 1 and 2. Episode 1 is my favorite of the prequels. I'll be honest there. But most people hail Revenge of the Sith as an excellent Star Wars film. And Revenge of the Sith has its qualities are there. I personally think there's still some rough acting from Hayden Christensen in episode 8 that makes it, episode 3 that makes it a little harder for me to watch. But actors like Ewan McGregor do an excellent job in those films, and the drama and the storytelling and the world building is still wonderful in episode 3. So it just because so if you look, episode 2 is my least favorite film and probably one of the least favorite films of the fan base outside of currently Last Jedi, and then it was followed by a film that's held by most fans to be excellent. So there's no reason because episode 8 in the eyes of the fan base was bad, that episode 9 is going to be terrible. I mean, look, they're bringing back Billy D. Williams to play Lando for us, which I'm personally excited for. Yes, I would have liked to have Lando sooner, but who would have thought that we would have gotten Billy D. Williams in live action again to play Lando after he didn't show up in either of the first 2 films? So I think we need to think about the fandom as a whole. And I think it's fair to criticize Disney and to criticize Lucasfilm when they make mistakes. But at the same time, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that they're going to correct those mistakes after we criticize them on it. But if if they don't then correct that mistake, if episode 9 ends up being as divisive of a film as episode 8, and they weren't trying to make it a good film, then I think Star Wars fans have the right to put a lot more questioning on Disney, and a lot more emphasis and a lot more stress on them for having made episode 9 a bad movie. I mean, episode 9 is a film that people have been looking forward to for a couple decades now. I think everyone, when George Lucas announced the prequels, would prefer to have known what happened after episode 6 rather than what happened before episode 4. Um, so I mean, yes, if Disney doesn't get episode 9 right, then there's definitely, I think, people need to get on to Disney about it. But I think there's better ways of criticizing the fan of criticizing the content Disney puts out than simply ignoring everything and putting hate there and discouraging other people from watching the movie. I mean, people need to decide for themselves whether or not they dislike episode 8. Because, as I told you, I loved episode 8 on my first viewing. It's not until after I started listening to other people's criticism that I really started thinking about it. And again, I told you my criticisms of the film at the beginning of this discussion. And at the same time, I feel like I have to defend The Last Jedi, even though I criticize it. And it's probably my second least favorite Star Wars film now to go rewatch. Again, Attack of the Clones being my least favorite. Um, but I think as a fan base, we need to realize that we need to stick together. We don't need to divide our community because other people hate it. We need to look at a difference in opinion and hear people out. We can make arguments. That's fine. There are debates that are allowed. I mean, there was literally uh, James Arnold Taylor made a short little YouTube series. James Arnold Taylor voiced Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars, by the way. He made a short little YouTube series way back when that was exactly about debates within the fandom. I think we're allowed to have those, but I don't think we need to put down people that like certain parts of our fandom. I certainly wish that people didn't put down Jar Jar Binks as much as they do. And there are people that are going to hate on me when I say Jar Jar Binks is not awful. And I think he serves a decent role in the prequel trilogy that should be acknowledged. And even though he's a bumbling idiot, he's supposed to be a bumbling idiot. I'd be a little bit more disappointed if he wasn't. Those are his character traits, and let's be honest, there are bumbling fools in our own world. So to say that we can't have disagreements in the fandom and everyone has to either hate or love something is wrong, but then to go on and say that that hate has to be directed towards future content and to try to convince everyone that our own fandom is dead simply because people hate one film is wrong. And what would end up killing the fandom is hate. Uh, Again, let's look at the title of episode 4. The title of episode 4 is A New Hope. And with Star Wars fans, we always have a new hope that we're going to be getting new content. When a trilogy is finished, we continue to hope for new content. For example, when episode 3 was over, I'm sure fans were ecstatic to hear about the release of the Clone Wars series, even though initially the Clone Wars series was not that good. Um, so We just have to hope while at the same time criticize. We can be like the rebellion and criticize while also hope. There's no reason to act like the rebellion leaders at, during Rogue One that were so divisive that they almost led to the defeat of the rebellion by never acting. We have to act to keep our fandom alive. And there's never been anything wrong with criticism, but there's always been something wrong with hate. I think as fans, we need to realize there's a difference between hate and criticism. Criticism derives from there being some sort of disagreement with how something was made, but criticism also shows that you believe there is room for improvement. But when you're hating on something, you think something needs to be gotten rid of, and you're not offering any way of improvement for the future. Um, so I think what we need to do as fans is show Disney what we want out of them and what they can do to improve our future as fans. Um, and I think some of the stuff is coming up this year. I mean, Disney listened to how we hated on the fact that they got rid of the Clone Wars, and Clone Wars Season 7 is coming out at the end of the year. I think as fans, we're super looking forward to this. There's no question in my mind it's going to be bad because Dave Filoni's at the head of it. And if it is for some reason bad, people are going to blame Disney instead of Dave Filoni when Dave Filoni was the one who made it. But we have to criticize Disney and show them how they can correct their mistakes. What is it that you didn't like about episode 8 that they can do right in episode 9? For example, you don't like what they did with Luke. Well, if they happen to bring back as Luke as a Force Ghost, what types of things are you looking for Disney to do with Luke as a Force Ghost that would redeem what happened in episode 9 in your mind? Is there a role Luke can play? That sort of thing is what we're looking for as fans. So, as an end message, because I need to get to sleep soon, I just need to get this off my mind. As an end message, as a Star Wars fan to fellow Star Wars fans, I think we need to put more love, be emanating more love for our fandom rather than hate. And we need to indicate that our fandom is alive and well and is a growing community rather than a shrinking one. Because I think we can all agree that we want Star Wars to be alive for future generations. And we need to show Disney and Lucasfilm what they can do to improve our fandom so that we as fans can continue to be excited and continue to go seeing movies so that we can get stories that we want, such as for me a sequel to Solo, or for some people this Mandalorian series coming out, or the possibility of Old Republic content in the future. We just have to show our love for the fandom, but we also need to show when something goes wrong through criticism and show Disney as fans that we're able to respond in a way that could be negative for them if they don't correct their mistakes. But at the same time, we don't need this negativity to affect things that Disney does well and send bad messages when Disney does something correct, like Solo. Please comment below. I know I'll probably get hate from people for what I'm saying because I don't like The Last Jedi. But I'm looking here for a conversation at what people think the current state of our fandom is and why it continues to be divided and why people can't come together to hope that episode 9 can correct what people think went wrong in episode 8 and why people keep trying to argue that our fandom that's one of the biggest uh, one of the biggest franchises in the world. I mean, you can go into almost any store and find a Star Wars product. How can something like that be dying when it seems so alive? And what are the ways that we can, as fans, keep inducting and not scare off new members of our awesome community and keep emanating that love that can be found at places like Star Wars Celebration? So, this is Star Wars Indiana. Thanks for listening in. Hopefully, I don't get too much hate for this, but talk to you guys later. Bye.